In today's video, we are going to begin to address the issue with the John McCain. I have spent probably 10 hours grand total reading through this report, each line, and trying to match it up with what we had reported and what we had shown earlier. When I read through this report, what happened is fairly complex. For guys who were in the Navy and on boats, it isn't, but for those of us who weren't, it's a bit of a steep learning curve. What the Navy is alleging has happened here is they were in a heavy current situation, trying to move into a separation scheme, into a channel with a lot of other ships, and a series of malfunctions and misjudgments led to an error in the steering that pretty much just put this ship right in front of another one. When I read through it and I look at the tracks of both ships and see what's being said and look at what we have been reported independently from the Navy, while it's inexcusable and probably somewhat criminal, this very well might be pretty close to what the Navy is saying happened. Not the Fitzgerald, for sure, but this issue, when we went back and looked at the Porter, USS Porter, when it collided with the MV Ottawazan so many years ago, 2012, in the Straits of Hormuz, we saw how that ship behaved, and it is almost identical to how the MC ALNIC behaved here. We saw a ship tracking straight, not making a bunch of turns, and then all of a sudden we saw a sharp turn. We saw the ship loiter in the area and then leave. That's what the Ottawazan did when it hit the Porter. Here we see, and we're going to show this here in a minute from the track, this almost identical behavior. We don't have a lag in reporting like we saw with the USS Fitzgerald. We don't have a whole bunch of mysterious actions post alleged collision time like we did with the ACX Crystal. We don't see the Navy having a lack of command of the facts afterward and reporting a different collision time that's being reported by other investigating agencies. We don't have any of that. So in this particular case, while the timing is very, very strange that this happened in such close proximity and time to the issue with the Fitzgerald, I hate to say it. Well, I don't hate to say it. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy that this happened. But the more I look at this based on what the Navy is providing here, now the Navy could be providing completely, totally false, fictitious information. That could be the case, but there's no evidence here to show it. I mean, what this looks like is what they're saying happened. There was a loss of steering. Basically, in a nutshell, this is what happened. They were trying to steer into this area, and they were having an issue with the current. The two driving thrusters, the two propellers, were operating independently of each other, each running on a different plant, and because they have two power plants down there. And so apparently this issue was causing a problem with steering control. So they have a steering mechanism where they can use the speed of those propellers to push the nose left or right. You know, if you just think about, you know, if you're in a car, and I know I hate to use this again, but if the tires on the right side of the car are moving faster than the tires on the left side of the car is going to move to the left. And that's what they were trying to do, is they were attempting to use the propellers to steer. There was a heavy current, and so they were having to adjust the rudder to push the nose to the right just to keep it straight. So it also allowed for a difference of actual speed versus over ground speed. And when they shifted this, the computer moved the rudder back to the middle, which then the current started pushing it to the left. They were unaware of that. That's unexcusable. One propeller was moving faster than the other. The one on the right apparently was moving faster than the one on the left, and that caused it to continue to turn to the left. By the time they were able to hash all of this out, it was too late, and they sailed right in front of this ship. And as you can see here with their track, the ALNIC was sailing straight. Didn't make a bunch of changes like the ACX Crystal did. It was sailing true on a straight course, and it was around a bunch of other ships that were doing the exact same thing as it was. You know, it wasn't being this strange, weird, odd thing like the ACX Crystal was. You know, and when this thing collided with the Fitz, with the John McCain. It came to a stop as fast as it could. It made a turn to its port, which is what you would expect it to do, and it stayed in the area. It loitered, and eventually it left, but it didn't do a whole bunch of turns and changes in course and all this other nonsense. And this is we're going to show this real quick. This is just a few seconds prior to this, but it had been tracking straight here. There was a minor course correction, but all of these other ships made the same course correction here. And you can kind of barely see it up here. But we'll display this real quick, and of course it's the one with the blue line. And there you see the collision coming. It makes a left-hand turn. Before we had alleged that it had turned into it, and we thought the ship was off to its port, and that's not the case here. And this makes perfect sense for what the Navy story says. It stops. It loiters. We don't see a whole bunch of changes. It took it quite a while to get dislodged. And, it's staying in the same general area. This is exactly what you would expect after a collision. And it's leaving, and here's the most important thing, it's leaving the separation scheme to get itself out of harm's way. And this makes sense. And there it goes. It got itself out of the scheme. Nothing here this is exactly what you would expect, and we saw this once again with the Porter and the MV Ottawazan when that accident occurred in the Straits of Hormuz back in 2012. So, like I said, when we were all caught up in the issue with the Fitzgerald and the Crystal, to see this happen again, was damn strange and damn suspicious. And I had alleged in another video that if the Navy's right, it's worse than what I'm alleging. Because if they have this level of incompetence, this level of lack of training aboard these ships, they are sitting ducks. If someone did actually want to attack one of these ships, and they had guys that didn't know how to man these stations properly, be in command of their particular area, it doesn't matter how many billions you spend on this warship, it's just going to be a giant target. So in the case of the McCain, now it's been reported to me privately that there are some issues in the report with where people were and were not at the time. I don't want to reveal too much, but I've been in contact with people who know people aboard these ships and were aboard these ships when it happened. And there's some lack of a detail as to where certain people were when. That in and of itself just points to naval mismanagement. We've seen errors in reports, the one that we purported in the last two videos where the times were stamped wrong and they changed the video. That very well could be just a typo. And not every single thing that's wrong or inconsistent is going to be a result of something giant and nefarious. But it does go to one of two things has happened. People lie. I'm a human intelligence guy. I'm not a signals intelligence guy. Was in the Army, not the Navy. There's a difference in the way people behave when they're trying to cover acts that are shameful, that they're ashamed of, and they're trying to put a lipstick on a pig, so to speak, and when they're trying to cover up positive actions that were wrong. There's a difference between covering up criminal behavior and just covering up poor behavior, if that makes sense. And this looks like the inconsistencies with the McCain is just covering up poor behavior, that the Navy was embarrassed in this case, but not the Fitz. Something else is going on completely with the Fitzgerald, especially with its location and the mission of that ship. One of the things in the Fitz, and we'll cover this real quick when we get out of this, as we're getting out of here, we're not going to go too much longer on this. In the report from the Fitz, they had chronicled that it was an issue of fatigue that had led to some of the problems, and you can read that for yourself. I'll scroll up here and see if I can find it. We're down 34 pages or so. But that they just had come off leave. They had just come off liberty a matter of hours, and most of the crew was still sleeping at that time. I don't know how they could say it was fatigue. They had just it says right in the report that they had just gotten off liberty. So You see, and that's just once again the problem, the issue with the Fitzgerald, is that the issue with the Fitzgerald has so many behaviors on not just the part of the Navy, but on the part of the other ship. I think we're almost here. Here's where we're talking about the Fitzgerald, and Liberty expires for crew 0600 the day before. So they'd only been back off Liberty for a day. And most of them are already back in bed. So that's going to be the issue here. We're going to, I'm not going to say we're going to let the McCain go, and the issue with the McCain, because there's some issues the Navy really needs to answer for in this, about that level of lack of training, because there's things that these guys are going to have to be asked to do in wartime that are going to be a whole hell of a lot more complicated than keeping your ship from getting hit by another. And and I'm sure there's a lot of you out there right with me on that. And just one other issue. The only other channel I have ever mentioned on YouTube is Patriot Nurse. And I recommended people go there, and I asked people to pray for her because it looked like she was going through a lot of trouble. I have never attacked any other channel here. We live in America. God bless the fact that we live in America, and we can say what we believe, whether we're right or wrong. There are folks that from the Navy that have issues with people with the Army, and that's just always going to be. There's also issues with people. There's a culture in all branches of the military where NCOs don't like officers, and especially older NCOs love to point the finger and go ha 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 at when officers make mistakes or officers get in trouble. And that's largely what's been happening here, is we've seen a lot of high-level, high-ranking officers take the bullet on this one. And you're rightfully so, because both of these issues go to training and they go to preparedness, and that's higher up. The reason we're back on this is because there has been talk of them reprimanding lower-ranking sailors, down in the NCO and enlisted ranks, and that ain't gonna fly. Because there's nobody here. There was nobody asleep on duty on the Fitzgerald. There's nobody asleep on duty here. So when other channels, and I'm going to not mention them by name, decide they want to come take issue with this channel, it's probably more to do with the fact that NCOs have issues with officers, Navy has issue with Army, and all branches love to make fun of intelligence guys. And we're used to that. It's just part and parcel of the job. I would never discourage anyone from going anywhere on YouTube. If you feel you can find information or you can find a different perspective, go anywhere that pleases you. I've never asked anybody to click an ad here. If you like the ad, click it. If you don't. But it does, I can't say that it necessarily bothers me too bad, but when others continue to use this channel as a whipping post because they just don't like what it says, that speaks more to the idea that they don't want to have to deal with ideas they don't like or ideas they don't agree with. And that's what the military fights to protect. We fought for the right for people to speak, and speak in ways that aren't popular. People also have issues with my politics and my issue with the current administrator. Okay? We're allowed in this country to speak. And we're allowed in this country to say things and hold the government, and hold the military in this case, accountable. So when you hear people out there talking about me or talking about this channel and what it says or doesn't say, just keep that in mind. That we are still living in a free society, and these kids died for that. And that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to continue to be here and cover this. There's other issues with the Fitzgerald as well. We're going to go back over a lot of information that was previously covered as well, but we're going to put it now in the context of this latest report. So I will leave it there. Thank you very, very much. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.